Hello and welcome to another interesting video. Today I have with you David Fillary, who's a friend of mine from the Magic Circle, who's based in Singapore but originally from the UK. And we're going to talk about how he got into magic and his advice for you in terms of teaching, because his background is a teacher, so should be quite interesting. So let's find out about David. So David, tell us something about yourself. How did you get into magic?
Okay, so I've been doing magic now for about 10 years, and in that time I obviously started off as a beginner, but then I ended up teaching quite a lot of people magic in different scenarios. So I have taught at clubs, so I've run in schools, so I've taught children, and also taught at university, so university students, teaching them magic, including teaching them to get to the point of performing for events, so actually sort of coaching them as well. And like you just said, I'm a teacher, so my main job is teaching mathematics in a school. So I teach every day, and so I've learned to apply some of those skills I learned in teaching into how I teach magic and also how I learn magic. So hopefully you can take from this video how to learn better ways as well.
Great stuff. So when it comes to lecturing and teaching magic, is that very different? Obviously, it's a very different type of performance, you could say. What's your experience about teaching magic?
You often see when you come to lectures that some people can perform brilliantly, but when it comes to breaking it down to teach, can be quite poor in that sense. And I think it's understanding that where you're at the moment took a long time to get to. So I can't teach a routine of mine that I've worked on for 5 years to someone who's new to magic. It's going to be too much, overwhelming. So it's about going back to the start and breaking that down. And so one of the things I think is very useful when it comes to teaching magic to lots of people at once, say in a lecture, is bearing in mind that people have different levels. So in teaching, we call it differentiation, the idea of sort of catering for all the different levels of ability. So can I just give a quick example with a routine?
Yes,
how I
please.
break it down? So I taught this for an online lecture I did. For the conjuring community with Aaron Fisher, and this is the routine I originally showed him for how I was going to teach. So it's a very short sequence, but basically going right here, and it's going to travel from this hand along this arm, and into this hand. And it looks something like this. From this.
Wow. Oh, that's so good.
So that's the way
Wow.
I do it. But like I was saying,
Yep.
that's taken years of little finesses, little touches to do it. But when I'm first teaching it, I want to break down the core ideas so someone who's new to Grow Magic can still take it up. So the first thing I would teach is a different routine, but similar, of asking someone to hold onto your hand right there, and then someone else to hold onto this hand, and the same effect happens.
Wow.
But I can start with that, and then they can start learning that idea, and then I can say, okay, the second group of people, let's go a little bit further now. Let's just say this coin's, if you just keep your eye on that coin, it's going to vanish, and I can teach that as a separate part. And then finally I can start to do it, and one more phase before would be, so it's going to travel on this hand, along this arm to these fingertips, like this.
Amazing.
So I've taken the same idea, like the same fundamental idea, and I'm teaching it at different levels. So those people who are new can stay on that first level and just sort of appreciate the later levels, and then those that are quite advanced can pick up the finer details as I advance. And I think that's missing with a lot of teaching of magic.
I just want to say one thing though. I watched David's audition at the Magic Circle and I gave him a standing ovation. I don't normally give a lot of people standing ovations. His is one of them that I actually gave him a standing ovation. It was such a beautiful act about making a drink, and because my background is a flair bartender, I used to sort of do very similar things what David did, and it was just so me. I could see myself doing that routine, and I was like, that is one of the best things I've seen. Is that routine out, David, anyway, that people can see that, or was that just designed for the Magic Circle?
So I performed it at the Magic Circle for the audition, and that wasn't videoed, and I've also performed it at the Magic Circle competition. Unfortunately, a little something went wrong in that, so I'd rather not show that.
Fair enough.
And unfortunately, a lot of the performances, I've got a few performances, but they're sort of filmed by a friend from the back row, and they're not really ideal. So if people contacted me, I'd maybe share a private link, but it's not going to be on YouTube for all to see.
Okay, cool. But if people want to see some of your stuff, where can they watch that?
Okay, so I've got an Instagram, which you can share in the link, I'm sure, and my YouTube channel, where I also post some videos. And in terms of my actual teaching, I don't have it individually available, but in the Conjuring community, I've done a few lectures, all specifically on coin magic, and but I go through breaking it down for beginners, intermediate, advanced, for all the different things I've taught.
So at the moment, you're mainly doing Zoom lectures, or what sort of lectures are you doing at the moment?
At the moment, to be honest, not. So I've just moved to a new country, and it's settling that. So those were lectures I did in the past, and I've not done anything recently.
Okay. So when it comes to lecturing, I know I'm a lecturer too when I lecture at a lot of different magic clubs. And the most interesting bit in my lecture is after I finish my lecture, I usually have some sort of like a jam session with people that can ask me questions. Is there something that you do something differently with that? Or what's the best point of your lecture?
I'm not sure about the best of my lecture. But in terms of the jamming and sort of going around giving feedback, a few things on that. So one is that I'm sure you've all been into a lecture where the lecturer teaches a routine and then asks, are there any questions? And then there's an uncomfortable silence, and then the magician bulldozes on to the next trick. So I think I got this actually from salsa dancing, because I teach salsa as well, and I used to teach salsa, and I obviously learned it, and I experienced a lot of bad teaching in a way, and I knew I wasn't alone in not understanding it, because you're with a partner and they didn't understand it either, and then the next partner doesn't understand it either, but no one said anything. So something I started to use there when I was teaching salsa was something I use when I teach maths, is what I call the 5 fingers of understanding. And that's just a quick check. I just say to the class, can everyone hold up 5 fingers of understanding? 5 fingers meaning I fully get this, no questions, 100%, closed fist, I'm totally lost. And then you got 1, 2, 3. And what you find is you'll get a lot more honest feedback, because it's sort of the safety of the crowd rather than calling out a question. And obviously you can take questions as well, but this is a good way of checking. If you teach something and you're not quite sure if they've got it, rather than saying, are there any questions, just go for some sort of rating they can hold up, and you'll get immediate feedback, whether it's working or not.
That's a great tip. Wow. And when we spoke about the jam session, I think you've got some great advice on that. So please, can you talk about that?
Okay, so as part of a lecture, or this is perhaps more a workshop where you're teaching something and also going around giving feedback, one of the most useful things I've found is getting people to pair up and to critique each other. And this does 2 things. One, it frees you up to go around helping individuals without just leaving everyone bored on their own. And 2, if you give them some feedback criteria, it can be very useful. So if you tell them to look out for, okay, this first round we're just going to look at the mechanics of the trick. You know, are the hands doing the right thing? Look at each other. Is there any stiffness anywhere? Is anything flashing? Anything like that. And then you can do a second round on the presentation. Were there any pauses in the wrong place? And so on like that. So you can give directives on how to critique each other, and you'll find they help each other a lot. Even if the 2 people aren't very experienced, they can still give very good advice to each other, and then you're free to go around and help anyone who needs the most help.
That's really good. I don't normally do that, but I think I might start implementing that in the future at my lectures, or after the lecture, the jam session. So you did say you ran a magic club at some point. Are you still running a magic club?
With the current COVID-19 situation, I'm not. But up until that I was. I'd started a new magic club at my new school in Singapore, and back in England I ran the magic club. And in my university I was also the head teacher, teacher coordinator, and even once I left I was still providing sort of lesson plans and advice on how to teach the new students coming up. And so
you've inspired a lot of people to get into magic then.
And an interesting thing is, as you know, coin magic is my favourite area, and when I first joined the university club, very few other people doing coin magic, but after my teaching, the majority loving coin magic.
Wow.
So out of interest, who is your favourite coin magician?
I've got a few for different reasons, but I think I'll give one that is often underappreciated, and that'd be Al Schneider. Because there's so much focus now on the flashy visual stuff, and he just does stuff that looks like there's no sleight of hand. It looks...
I totally understand what you mean, because I am the same. When people ask me who's your favorite magician, or usually my answer is Tom Whitestone, but when it comes to a certain genre of magic, as we all know, there's so many different types of magic in that particular genre. Like you said, in card magic, they could be more on the mentalism focused or more on the flourishing aspects. So I totally understand what you mean. And how do you structure these sessions at the Magic Club?
First of all, when I'm teaching the kids, I have to really lower my expectations of how much I teach. So typically it'll be 1 or 2 things at most in an hour. And just like you saw with that short coin routine I did, there's really like one concept being taught. I focus on that one concept and I really try and break down what can I get from that concept. So I then, after I teach the mechanics of that to the basic level, I pair them up to do some practice, and then I'll talk more deeply about the psychology behind it and all the details with that. At university, I was able to teach a bit more at a faster level, because obviously they're faster learners. But it's still a similar process of taking routines that teach a fundamental concept. And I think something to bear in mind is that it means you won't necessarily teach your best material, or the best material. And in fact, Card College does the same thing. Card College 5, the last volume, has got all the really strong, sort of more perfect routines. And he talks about that he couldn't give the best methods at the start because it'd be overwhelming. He has to sort of build up to it. But now you have access to all the methods, you can choose the best ones. So you've got to bear in mind that you can't flood them with too much information at once, and you've got to pick the things that are the most important as you teach. So then after that, it's just about ordering it so that your first week teaches one move and the second week teaches another move, and then in the third week perhaps you've got a routine that uses those 2 moves together in a new way, and so you're getting repetition as well as new routines and concepts.
When it comes to teaching younger children, well, in your magic clubs, do you have different ages, or do you have different clubs with a particular type of age group?
So I teach in a secondary school, so all of my students are age 12 and above. So I haven't found the need to separate them in this case. I think if I had primary school students, I would have to separate it. But that's where the differentiation I talked about at the start comes into play. I've got some older kids who've learned some more magic beforehand, and they can access that more advanced stuff, while the others are more focused on the easier versions.
And how are you getting these students? Is it mainly word of mouth, or how's your marketing process for this?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a teacher in the school, and they've seen me perform. I've done some stage shows in this school and performing at lunchtime and things like that. So it's mainly word of mouth. I'd already had children approach me asking if there would be a club, and then I just spread the word there would be a club. And in my first school, I just started performing at lunchtime and quickly had big crowds seeing me, and then I opened the club and I had about 50 people crammed in one room.
Wow.
But fortunately, I taught something hard to begin with, just to kind of narrow the crowds down to make it more manageable. If they're willing to learn something hard, then they're going to be willing to continue learning.
So what would your advice be to learn personally?
Okay, so when it comes to learning magic, I've taken a few things from my teaching experience, but also the other skills. Like I said, I did salsa, also did martial arts a lot at university. And so something I got from that is that slow motion practice is often even more beneficial than practice at the regular speed. So once you can practice a move in martial arts in super slow motion, then once you get to normal speed, you can do it faster, more efficiently, and more powerfully. And exactly the same thing really applies to magic. If you can do a move in perfect slow motion, then suddenly at normal speed it'll be perfect just as well. So I'd say that's one thing to bear in mind.
Yeah.
Another thing from, again, martial arts was drills. We don't always, the things we do in martial arts aren't necessarily directly the thing we do in fighting. So you gave the example of doing push-ups. You're not going to do a push-up in a fight. It's not going to help you, but it's going to help you train some attributes. And there's some sensitivity training we did. It builds attributes. So there's drills you can do. So with coin magic, it might be shifting between different positions in a hand. even if it's not part of a routine, it will give you skills with your hands that you didn't have before. So finding drills to just practice little parts of routines or just how to handle things can be really useful.
Yeah, that's so important. It's because, sorry to cut you off there, but when I teach my crystal ball, one of the segments that I teach is just finger training. So I just train how to move your fingers or isolate your fingers, and basically train your brain to do different things with different hands. I guess it's similar with coin magic. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and the sort of stuff you do, of course, you're going to have similar practicing styles. I've been learning your isolation stuff, and you've got to do it in slow motion. You can't practice that fast, you'll get bad habits. You've got to practice perfect slow motion.
Yeah.
But then one thing to sort of counter that is that you shouldn't always train in perfect situations. So
What do you mean by that?
So I can sit down here and I can practice my coin magic, and I might be able to do some really advanced stuff, and then I go and perform and I drop coins and things slip out because I've been practicing in a sat down position in a safe environment, so quiet. And one of the things that got my coin magic, I think, good is that my main practicing time is when I'm walking. It's when I walk to work is my practice time.
I get it now. Okay.
So, and for instance, I think it's okay to reveal this, but I was practicing sleeving, and that's a dangerous technique. You can drop coins. But from doing it while walking to places, I now feel totally confident that I can do it at any time. Because if I can do it while walking across a field, I can be checking my phone in one hand and practicing with the other hand. If I can do it in that situation, then I can do it in a routine where I'm stood still and quite relaxed. And actually, even as a teacher, I'll sometimes be practicing sleight of hand while teaching, hopefully without them noticing, which is also fun. But that means I can do it in all these situations, do it on the bus. And so finding ways to practice where you're not in your comfort zone, so then your real performances become a lot easier.
Yeah, I'll say something that I'd never said this before, because I don't really talk too much about my old career as a flair bartender. But when you said practice not in comfortable situations, this is what I used to do. When you're competing on stage, sorry, I'm going off topic there, but I just want to, this is very important to what you said. When I was juggling bottles, that, as you know, it's a lot more easier to flair with bottles that you're really comfortable with, the weight and your hands are dry. But what I used to do is when you're on stage, sometimes you have actual liquid in there, and sometimes that liquid spills out, so your hands get a little slippery. So what I used to do is wet my hands at some point and then try and flare with the objects just being wet. Try and flare in dim lighting situations, because sometimes when you're on stage you get all these flash photography in your eyes and you have to be able to deal with that kind of situation. So I'm sure that sort of ties up to what you were saying, adding these obstacles in the way you practice.
So when it comes to coin magic, practicing with wet hands and coin magic as well. Sometimes my hands are sweaty, sometimes they're not, depending on the temperature of the room. So I can't wait until I've got the perfect situation. I should practice in all of those, or maybe even make it worse. I've not done it, but you could put oil in your hands and try, and then see how you do.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you might have noticed this also when you're performing. It happens sometimes during winter. I guess because my hands are so cold, there's not a lot of moisture on my hands, and there's certain moves that I can normally do perfectly. Sometimes I find it hard. Even, I don't want to give away too many methods, but certain bits of palming coins, it's where it just slips out of your hand, and I'm thinking, oh my god, I need to put some sort of cream. I go to the bathroom, I wash my hands with soap, and then it's so I'm sure a lot of you have this situation. So I think if you practice and get used to dealing with these kind of situations, it can help. So people watching this right now who are thinking, we don't lecture, we don't really teach magic, how could you improve your magic just by meeting other friends? What's your advice on that, David?
Okay, so a few things I did when I was running the university club is, yes, I was a teacher, but I was also a student with them. It wasn't like I was a teacher-child situation. So it was a lot more like a jam at all times, really. I'd teach a routine, but then after that, it would always descend into a jam, and we'd do a jam at the pub or whatever. And so there's a few things we could do to improve these. One is competitions. I think setting some sort of competition, whether it's all of you need to do the same routine next week, but you're going to present it differently so we can then compare. So that's one thing, just having friendly competitions. or challenges, who can come up with the best routine using this. And then another thing is creativity challenges. So often that's by giving constraints or some sort of weird item to use. But I want to give an example actually of something I did with the class at university, and that was to actually go through pretending to be real audience members in real situations, and not just sitting there watching the magic, but actually rehearsing how to approach tables, rehearsing how to do all of that. And I don't think I've ever seen that in any other club, of a group of magicians sitting at a table pretending to be dining there, and then having someone come up and introduce himself. That often the introduction is ignored, and it's often the thing that magicians are most scared of when they get started. So why not get some friends together, just ask them, can you be spectators for me, but go from the start, don't just go straight into the routine, and really practice all of that. And that really helped their confidence, because then I would go and we performed at the same events, and I could see them go up to tables and use what they practiced and were so much more confident. So that was really useful. Okay, and the final thing to mention, I think, about jams is that they should be there for giving feedback. It shouldn't be they show you one version and then you show them another version and then they show you another version and back and forth. Ideally, you want to really use that time to get feedback, and you need to learn to ask for it. And so it may be that you want to ask for a specific thing. So ask, can you work on my presentation? Can you look out for any of these problems? And I just thought I'd mention a few things where I've had good feedback from people, because there's certain people I would go to for feedback more so than others. So for instance, at the Magic Circle, when I first went there before I joined, I met Joseph Badman and Chris Wood, and I performed a free fly for them. And they didn't give any feedback on the sleight of hand, because that was fine, pretty much. But one of the things they gave feedback on was my back wasn't straight. And that's something I never would have considered, but my posture needed to be improved, and I improved that, and it made a difference. And so that's a thing that you wouldn't perhaps expect when you're thinking about feedback. But if you find the people that are willing to give that feedback, and if you're open to accepting that feedback, it will improve you so much. Another person who gives good feedback is, well, one is my wife. She gives good feedback. I performed a routine recently, and again, she wasn't criticizing the slides, but she noticed my tone of voice was too flat for the routine. That's again another thing that you hadn't considered. So I guess finding people that are willing to look out for the other things that you do and give feedback on those, and you'll improve a lot.
Yeah, I used to film myself just walking, not performing magic, but I just wanted to film myself just walking towards the camera like I'm walking on stage, and just ignoring the camera, just walking in front of people, looking around left, right, because I had a similar, I would say, problem to you, as my posture was terrible. I used to always slouch and things like that. So maybe I still do it. I need to keep filming myself, because you've got to keep reminding yourself these little things. So that's fantastic advice, David.
I filmed myself teaching before as well, and I filmed like a whole hour of me teaching a class, and it's excruciating to watch. But you do pick up so many things, especially repeated words that you use. So I was going, and this, all right, and it's obvious when you perform magic as well, when you get that sort of thing happening. There's something else to.
Yeah, when you don't have a script, you're always going to start saying words like R's, and all of these things keep coming up. And once you see yourself back again on camera, you go, oh my God, I just hate myself. Happens to all of us. Yeah. You
mentioned this is something I saw. I was looking through our old messenger chat, and we talked about practicing the script without props. And you said you did that for your routines, and I said I did it for mine, because especially us people who love sleight of hand, it's virtually impossible to switch off your mind thinking about it. So actually just going the whole rehearsal without the props means you can focus and nitpick and improve just the presentation side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, while I'm listening to the music in my head, I'm thinking of what words I'm saying, and I don't have anything in my hands, but I'm just going through my routine again and again, just in my head. So that was great advice from you, David. Thank you so much. Thanks to the people watching this. If you want to see David back again, definitely message in the comments below. We can try and get him back again because he is so wonderful, especially with the teaching background. It really helps, and he's a wonderful magician. I encourage you, go and check him out on YouTube. I'll leave all his links below with his Instagram. And yes, have a wonderful time, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.